The house is hers now, my mother said flatly, sliding the folded deed across the table. My name is Clara, I'm 27, and if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. The ink was still smudged on my hands from tightening the last wooden beam, the one that held up the porch I had poured my savings and sweat into. I thought tonight we'd celebrate, maybe eat takeout beneath the yellow light buzzing in their kitchen. Instead, the air smelled of betrayal, sharp as bleach, heavy as smoke. Dad cleared his throat. You'll understand. Your sister needs stability. She's starting her family. You can rent somewhere else. My chest tightened. Rent somewhere else. I'd built this place. Every tile, every screw, every late-night shift I worked was stacked in its walls. You're serious? My voice cracked, softer than I wanted. Mom looked away, fixing her gaze on the family photo behind me, the one where I stood on the edge, almost cropped out. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Let me know in the comments. The room hummed with silence. My sister twirled the new house key in her fingers like a toy, her nail polish glinting red beneath the overhead light. She didn't even look at me. That's when it hit me. The house wasn't just taken. My place in this family had been erased, written over like chalk in the rain. And in that erasure, something colder took root inside me. The night air outside was damp, carrying the faint smell of cut grass and wet soil. I stood at the edge of the rental house, the house I had built with my own blistered hands, watching the porch light flicker as my sister laughed inside. My laughter should have echoed there, too. A moth battered itself against the bulb. Over and over. Hopeless, relentless. That was me, banging on glass, trying to belong. Clara, don't make this harder than it is. Dad's voice drifted from the doorway. He leaned against a frame, arms crossed, face carved into stone. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the nights I came home limping from double shifts, or the way I begged them to let me invest my savings into this house instead of some faceless stock. But the words shrank in my throat. Behind him, my sister's shadow moved freely through my kitchen. She opened drawers, claimed space, as if she had laid every brick herself. You'll find another place, Dad muttered. You're strong. Strong. Funny how strength only mattered when it meant sacrificing me. The cicadas screamed in the dark, their shrill song louder than my heartbeat. I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the small brass key still warm from my grip. I hadn't given it back. Not yet. That key became more than metal. It was a pulse, a promise. If they thought erasing me was that simple, they had forgotten something. Glass can cut when it breaks. I slept that night on a friend's couch, the key pressing into my palm even as I dreamed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my sister's red nails glinting in the kitchen light, curling around what I had built. Morning light spilled across the blinds, too sharp, too cruel. I scrolled through my phone, half in a daze, until a notification flashed. Bank transfer confirmed. The last of my savings, every cent I'd put toward lumber, concrete, permits, was gone. Drained. I shot up. My sister's husband had access. He'd helped me set up online payments for supplies. I'd trusted him. Now the account balance mocked me with a row of zeros. You still wear that perfume? My friend's roommate asked, stepping into the kitchen. Random words, ordinary, but they pierced me. Because yes, I still wear lavender, the scent Mom once said made me smell too grown when I was barely 16. She'd preferred rose water on my sister. Always rose water. I realized then it wasn't just the house. It was a pattern stitched into years of favoritism, of quiet dismissals, of erasures I had mistaken for love. Outside, traffic hummed like a restless ocean. I closed my fist around the key until the teeth dug crescents into my skin. That brass key wasn't just a relic of what they took. It was proof. Proof that I still had claim to something they believed I'd surrendered. And proof can open more doors than one. By the time I walked back onto the property, the late afternoon sun had turned the walls of the house golden, like it was taunting me, shining brighter in their possession than it ever had in mine. My sister's SUV was in the driveway, parked smugly across the fresh gravel I had laid myself. I didn't knock. I slid the brass key into the back door and stepped inside. The air was thick with new paint and her perfume. Rosewater, of course. I moved slowly, my fingers brushing the counters I had measured, the cabinets I had sanded until my hands bled. Each surface hummed with memory, and yet not a trace of me remained. In the living room, a box sat half open. I crouched, curiosity pulling me closer. Inside were documents, utility bills, a lease agreement draft, even my original receipts with my name scratched out and hers penciled in. They weren't just taking the house. They were rewriting the story. A floorboard creaked upstairs. My sister's laugh followed, light and careless. I froze, listening. My heart thudded against my ribs, each beat louder than the cicadas outside. I slipped the lease draft into my bag, my hands trembling. Somewhere between fear and fury, clarity settled in. They hadn't covered their tracks. They left paper trails, signatures, timelines. Things that proved the house was mine before they erased me. I stepped back into the sunlight, clutching that draft like a lifeline. And for the first time, the key in my pocket felt heavier with purpose. That night, I spread the lease draft across my friend's coffee table. The edges curled like they knew they carried weight. My hands shook as I compared the dates, the signatures, my deposits logged months before my sister's name even appeared. The city permit papers were still in my email. The utility receipts were in my account. Every breadcrumb led back to me. I wasn't just erased. I was robbed. The television murmured in the background, a news anchor talking about rising rents in our town. The words cut sharper than I expected. If they had stripped me of this house and left me with nothing, then my silence would make me complicit in my own undoing. I dialed a number from a business card I'd kept tucked in my wallet, the real estate attorney who once approved my permits. When he answered, his voice was calm, measured. "Ms. Hayes, how can I help you?" I inhaled, steadying myself. I need to know how fast a house deed can be challenged. There was a pause. Then, "That depends on how much proof you have." I looked down at the papers scattered across the table, the receipts glowing on my phone screen, the brass key lying like an anchor between them all. "Plenty," I whispered. The line buzzed with silence, but for the first time in weeks, I felt my footing return. They thought they had closed the door on me, but I still had the key, and the lock was beginning to turn. The lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and ink, a place where words turned into weapons. I laid out every document on his desk, permits, receipts, the lease draft with my sister's name sloppily scribbled over mine. The brass key sat between us, glinting under the desk lamp. He adjusted his glasses, scanning each page. "This isn't just sloppy," he said, tapping the altered lease. "It's fraudulent. If you want to fight this, Clara, you have a case." The words rang in my chest like a church bell. A case. My story, finally written in ink they couldn't erase. As he explained the process, injunctions, hearings, evidence, I caught my reflection in the office window. For the first time, I didn't see the girl they had dismissed. I saw a woman sharpening her silence into something undeniable. Later that evening, I walked past the house again. The curtains were drawn, but light bled through the edges, spilling onto the porch I had built. My sister's laughter floated out faintly, carelessly, as if walls could protect her from what was coming. I tightened my grip on the folder of documents. A car rolled past, headlights sweeping across me. For a moment, I almost felt like an intruder on my own creation. But then the night shifted, the crickets quieted, and the porch light flickered. Just once, like it recognized me. They thought possession was ownership. They forgot creation leaves fingerprints, and mine were all over this house. Courtrooms aren't cinematic, not at first. The air is dry, the carpet dull, the benches hard. But when my parents walked in with my sister at their side, it felt like the opening of a film I'd been waiting my whole life to see. They avoided my eyes except my sister, who smirked as if she already knew the ending. She wore rosewater again, of course she did. The scent lingered when she passed my seat, sour and sweet at the same time. The judge shuffled the papers my lawyer had filed. My permits, my receipts, the lease draft with my name etched faintly beneath their pencil marks. He paused, eyebrows raising. "Ms. Hayes," he said, looking at me, "these records show you funded and constructed the property. Why was the deed transferred without your consent?" My father cleared his throat, fumbling. It was a family decision. "Clara, she's strong. She'll manage on her own." The room grew still. My lawyer slid forward another document, the bank statement showing my drained account. The silence after was sharper than any shout. For the first time, my sister's smirk cracked. The judge's gavel hit once, echoing like thunder. "This matter requires a formal hearing. Until then, possession is frozen." Frozen. The word pulsed in my chest. Their grip on my house had just been loosened. And for the first time, they looked at me not as the disposable daughter, but as the woman they'd underestimated. Weeks later, the house stood quiet, its windows catching the late autumn light. The gavel had fallen again, this time in my favor. The deed corrected, the fraud exposed. When I stepped onto the porch, the boards creaked under my weight like they remembered me. My parents didn't come that day. My sister didn't either. Their absence was louder than their laughter ever was. Inside, the air smelled of sawdust and lavender cleaner. I'd scrubbed away the rosewater. The kitchen counters gleamed, my hand smoothing over the same what I'd once sanded with tears stinging my eyes. But this time it didn't ache. It pulsed with ownership. I placed the brass key in a small frame by the window, no longer a weapon clenched in my fist, but a symbol of proof, of survival, of boundaries finally held. My phone buzzed with a message from the attorney. "All filings complete. It's officially yours." I didn't reply. I just watched the sunlight shift across the floorboards, slow and certain, as if time itself was honoring what had been restored. For once, I didn't feel the urge to shout or even to gloat. Revenge hadn't been fire. It had been clarity, the kind that settles in your chest and refuses to move. I breathed in, steady, certain. My story was no longer theirs to edit. This house carried my fingerprints, and so did my future.